Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Amand Hardiman and I'm a second year doctoral student at Utah State University and a researcher in the Families and Sport Lab led by my mentor and advisor, Dr. Travis Dorsch. Today I'm going to talk about the effects of race and affluence on parents' perspectives concerning youth sport participation during COVID-19. Recent literature has indicated approximately 40 million youth athletes between the ages of 5 and 18 have competed annually in youth sport in the United States. As a result, research suggests that the youth sport industry is a $17 to $30 billion enterprise. Because the US is a capitalistic free market, youth sport clubs and programs can charge participants any amount without a governing body to regulate. Therefore, there are possible disparities between who can afford well-designed youth sport leagues around the country. However, in March 2020, the entire youth sports sector shut down due to the novel COVID-19 virus. Consequently, the hours of sport participation significantly dropped as well. Now, a year later, youth sport leagues are proceeding to reopen. As a result, researchers must understand how COVID-19 has influenced who maintained hours of sport participation through the pandemic. Therefore, the present study was designed to examine how race and affluence impacted the sport participation rates of youth before and during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we sought to investigate youth sport parents because sport literature indicates parents are gatekeepers to the youth sport experience. Now, online questionnaires were completed by a nationally represented sample of parents from June and July of 2020. And these parents had at least one child participating regularly in youth sport prior to the pandemic. Since we did not have enough power for all the minoritized groups to be represented individually, we combined all minoritized groups into one titled called non-white to include all participants. The variable of interest in our study reflected children's weekly hours of sport participation before and during COVID-19 related restrictions. Meanwhile, a multivariate analysis of variance, or MANOVA, using a two-key post hoc test were conducted to examine between group differences by the independent effects of race and affluence and the combined effects of race and affluence. Our MANOVA results suggest the difference in hours participated between white and non-white were significant. As the figure here indicates, non-white groups saw a slight decrease in hours of participation during COVID-19 compared to their white counterparts, indicating that race is indeed a salient component to youth sport participation during COVID-19. Similarly, results were yielded when examining for affluence too. As our MANOVA results indicated that hours of participation were significant for levels of affluence. As the figure indicates, all three groups have seen a decrease in participation during COVID-19, but the highest level of affluence saw the least amount of decrease in participation compared to medium and low levels of affluence. Now, when we examine for the combined effects of race and affluence, our MANOVA results illustrated similar findings. The conjunction of race and affluence resulted in significant effects between all groups. Specifically, white high, which is highlighted in yellow in the middle, compared to all other levels. As the figure illustrates, our white and high affluent groups saw the fewest restrictions in sport participation hours during COVID-19, followed by non-white affluent groups. However, non-white low affluent groups saw the largest decline in youth sport participation during the pandemic, thus indicating white and high affluent groups may have more buffers that allow for more sport participation than all other groups in the pandemic. Now, as we seek to return to youth sport, researchers must closely examine who youth sport benefits and who it disadvantages. A few ways to consider future research is through this notion of effective sport programming in all communities, particularly through this organizational effectiveness lens, as there's a lack of research on youth sport organizational effectiveness. And in other terms, we need to start asking ourselves, do sport leagues do what they say they do? Holding sport programs and clubs accountable for well-designed and affordable programming is essential moving forward. A second approach to consider is collaborating with local communities to promote physical activity through sport-based interventions. These interventions could inform local leaders how to implement and create well-executed youth sport environments that are affordable for all groups. And lastly, intersectionality research could unpack more nuances on how youth sport influences specific groups and individuals. In this research, we can begin to examine the systemic structures, public policy, and legislation that promotes privilege and disenfranchises individuals, organizations, and communities from youth sport. Because ultimately, we have a chance to implement equitable practices within youth sport as we seek to return to sport. Because our focus in research should be how to make youth sport for all. Now, I would like to acknowledge the research team that contributed to this presentation and ongoing study, especially the Aspen Institute Sports and Society team who funded this work. Thank you for listening. Feel free to contact me via Twitter, LinkedIn, or email to ask questions or engage in further dialogue about this study. Now enjoy the rest of this conference. Thank you.